Started. Thank you for joining us. I know we're doing this in a little bit of a different format here today, so we are very excited and appreciative to have New York State Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul joining us via Zoom. Lieutenant Governor Hochul, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
How are you? Good to see you.
Okay? A little delayed.
Thank you so much for making time, Lieutenant Governor. Also on the line with us, I believe we have Megan Taylor, who leads the Regional Office for Empire State Development from New York State. Megan, are you there? Maybe not. Oh, I think she's joining us shortly. Okay, thanks. We also have from my team, Lisa Berger, who leads our county level economic development office. So thank you to her for joining. Lieutenant Governor, before we just start, I'm going to give a few updates on what's happening in Ulster County. But before I do that, I just want to thank you, Governor Andrew Cuomo, the whole New York State leadership team. I'm so proud of how we have rallied as a state in the midst of this crisis, which I just think speaks volumes about your leadership and the governor's leadership. So on behalf of the 180,000 residents of Ulster County, thank you for what you've done and what you're doing and what's to come.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Well, I'm going to just give about a 2 or 3 minute update to the residents of the county on what's happening. And then the majority of our conversation, we're going to talk about what's coming and what's in the works in terms of driving economic recovery here in New York State. And Lieutenant Governor, I know you and your team have been already doing a lot of work and planning on this. So we'll start with an update just on the latest cases and data here in Ulster County. If we can throw up that slide, great. Thank you. So you'll see here, unfortunately, we do continue to see the number of cases rise. We're at 845 positive cases. We are tragically added 2 more fatalities since our last update. We're at 15 county residents. One good news statistic, we now have 51 individuals recovered, and we are going to start updating this on our county COVID tracker so that we can begin to see more and more good news in that regard. And then finally, I just want to quickly hit again on these projections. So if you look at the dotted lines on this graph, we're looking 10 days out. We're currently at 845 cases. If we all continue to do our part and follow the pause protocols, which have now been extended till until May 15th, we project that we'll be just over 1,000 cases in 10 days. If we let down our guard, we could be over 3,000 cases by our worst case projection. So what you all do between now and then really matters, and we continue to ask your help to follow the protocols outlined by the state. One other just quick update on our hospital and treatment capacity. And again, thank you to the governor and lieutenant governor for helping us add to this capacity. Top line, we're now in, I think, pretty good shape in terms of remaining capacity for hospital beds, ICU beds. These are staffed ICU beds, so if we need to add more of those, we can. And ventilators, we're in very good shape as well. So thanks to the hard work of many, both at Health Alliance and Ellenville Regional Hospital, but also our state partners and leaders, I think we're in good shape to meet the demand that we expect as long as everyone continues to stay home and slow the spread. So with those high-level updates, I would love to hand it over to Lieutenant Governor Hochul. Lieutenant Governor, again, thank you for joining us. You have been a true champion for Ulster County and for the whole region long before this, and we're excited to hear from you about what's going on with your team and the thoughts you have about how we're going to begin to unwind this carefully and get the economy going again in New York State.
County Executive, I appreciate the opportunity to directly connect with people on this call, primarily the small business community that is so under siege. But I first have to tell you, you've had an extraordinary first year, less than a first year in office. So this community has had an opportunity to see you were battle tested before, but now you've been battle tested once again and truly rose to the occasion. So it's been great for the governor and I to have a partner like you on the ground that's so willing to just roll up your sleeves, do whatever it takes to protect the people of your county. And certainly as we celebrated your beautiful swearing in family with our event with your family, and I'll never forget the scale of that event. Everyone was so excited to know that less than a year later that you've been having to go through the throes of a pandemic. So thank you for just being the leader that you are. And I've enjoyed coming to Ulster County so many times, from New Paltz up to Saugerties, and spending a lot of time in Kingston, walking the streets with you and Mayor Steve Noble. It's a pleasure. So I feel personally connected to the small businesses. They're not just names on a list. They're the ones that I can remember that meeting the business owners and seeing their pride and being able to be part of an emerging community, particularly in Kingston, where we have the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, $10 million to help change and alter forever the future of that community and the spinoff into our more rural areas of Ulster County. So I feel connected, and I was there, glad to see that we started the expansion of the Health Alliance facility. We talked about how, I think you were born there, and we talked about how important it was to be able to make sure that the Mid-Hudson area had world-class healthcare facilities when I was there in October. Who would have thought that just a few short months later that we'd really be relying on that world-class delivery of healthcare right here in the community, because it's literally saving lives. And so you all understand the pressure we are under with respect to the trends that the county executive just showed you. A lot of the eyes have been on New York City because the scale, the volume is so horrific in its scope, and the numbers that come out every day, while plateauing, are still almost hard to comprehend at a human level. But we also knew that New York City would reach a plateau sooner than the rest of the state. That's just by nature. And the concentration of people, either in transportation systems or in their housing, it would lend itself to a fast spread, but perhaps a fast decline following that. And again, we're not continuing to go upward statewide or in New York City. We're plateauing a bit, but I'm actually in upstate New York monitoring the response to make sure that every county gets the attention it deserves, and also recognizing that the trends that the county executive just demonstrated, I mean, this could end up being something that's very difficult to manage. It could be 3,000 new cases. Not all end up in a hospital, thank God. 80% will self-resolve, but will those 80% who don't end up in a hospital be carriers to spread it to other people? And that's always our fear at this time. So when we talk about how we are going to start loosening the valve, as the governor says, and we're talking about bringing back the economy, something I've been focused on since New York Pause first began, we also have to realize that the last thing that we can tolerate is an increase in the spread of the infection when there has been so much pain and sacrifice to get that under control. And people will say sometimes, the numbers aren't as bad as we've thought. Why can't we get back to normal? And the only reason they're not where they would have been is because of the social distancing and because of the shutdown of non-essential businesses and schools. Otherwise, we were absolutely on a path that would have been unsustainable for our healthcare system to handle the capacity that would have been required. So that is the good news wrapped into a major note of caution that for the short time being, and that's going to go until May 15th, we have to really continue on that path to stop massive wide-scale spread. But fortunately, in state government, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. While we are protecting the health and welfare of our citizens, we are aggressively pursuing a comeback strategy. And it will not be turning on a light switch. You've heard this before. It sounds cliche, but that's just the reality. That's the cold reality that we have to deal with, as much as we would love as leaders of this state to be able to say we're getting back to normal. But I think everyone on this call understands that. I mean, this is not something that's a new concept, that when we come back, it's going to have to be in a phased way. It's going to have to be rolled out based on, are there less essential industries, but that are still critically important, where we can protect the public and protect the workers? What do they look like? How do we scale them up eventually over time? But what I thought was important was the governor last week announced that this is going to be a coordinated effort among our neighboring states, because there's so much synergy, particularly in the Hudson Valley region, to cross over into other neighboring states. And it does not make sense for them to reopen their bars and restaurants and for us to have them closed. And there's this whole dynamic here that we really want to try and make sure that we're not doing something at odds or contrary to what our neighbors are doing. But that doesn't mean we'll be paralyzed into inaction if they choose to do something totally different. We are still independent, and we'll make sure that we're operating in the best interest of New Yorkers. So basically, repeated today was the governor said that the New York pause will continue till May 15th, that we are requiring that not just employers provide masks to their employees who interface with the public, but basically anyone who leaves their home has to now wear a mask. Don't get worried if you can't find the N95 and the state-of-the-art ones that you see the healthcare workers using or the other traditional masks. You can make your own. You can use a winter scarf that you would have had over your nose and mouth during the last snow that came your way. There's ways to do this, but as strange as it's going to look and unnatural as that's going to feel for some time, that's just one of the aggressive ways we're going to stop the spread, all with the intent, number one, of saving lives. But right after that is realizing that we need to start planning, and as soon as we can, start getting people back to work, businesses back open, and realizing that there have been monies made available through the federal government to help alleviate the burden, additional money for unemployment to supplement what New York State is already doing. But realizing there's a limit to that money, and we're already hearing words that some of the small business money is not going to be available until Congress gets back and reallocates more, and they need to do that. If you do anything, please push your representatives to make sure that they fight hard to get everybody back to Washington. Look at the states, look at the municipalities, look at the small businesses, and realize that a lot of money should have been allocated the first time, and we desperately need that money now. So I'll stop with that overview of where we are and start taking some of the start taking some of the questions. But I do want to acknowledge Megan Taylor is on the phone call as well. I've worked very closely with her. She does an exceptional job. Everyone knows her, feels like she's part of the family because she spends so much time in Ulster County and the Mid-Hudson region, where she's our regional director for Empire State Development. And I've been to many of our REDC meetings, which I chair, and have seen her in action. So I think people in the community trust her and know that she also is going to be a good steward of making sure that we have the resources going out to the communities that are so hard hit. So with that, County Executive, I think that's all. I was going to just give a high view of overview of what's going on, but happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. We really appreciate it. And again, the ability for you and the governor to lay out not just the immediate public health response, but where we're going, I think is critical. We have several hundred business owners, entrepreneurs, and even nonprofit leaders on the line here. And as you well know, we have this very vibrant business community and sense of community here in Ulster County and in the region. And everybody has been doing their best to ride through these waves, but there's understandably a lot of concern. And if you're willing to take a few questions, I know you're very busy, but I will we'll keep you for as long as we can. And I'll start with one that kind of follows up on something you hit on, which is the new executive order about face masks. One of the questions we've been receiving from many business owners is, do employers have to provide masks? Are there certain requirements about what types of masks? And how can they handle that? Where can they get access to them? Any more information on that would be very helpful to everybody online.
Basically, it's masks or face coverings. And so these are for employees who interface with the public. This was an executive order that came out earlier in the week that went into effect at 8 p.m. on Wednesday night, last night. And so that is the law right now, is that people are required to provide this to employees. But understanding that you cannot walk into a store and get them. They're not available. That's been a source of frustration for us. We're trying to get them in the hands of first responders and our medical teams. So just simply providing a cloth or some scarf or something to help in the meantime, or contract with someone to maybe make them. I know there's a lot of 3D printing going on, and people are manufacturing different devices down at SUNY New Paltz. I went down and visited there when I saw their state-of-the-art equipment there. So I think it'd be important for the local chambers, local business community to work together to see if we can get that out there. But certainly requests can go from the county to the state for this as well if there's a real shortfall, and we'll do our very best to get them out there. But also goes into effect Friday is the individual responsibility of anyone who's outside their home, anywhere near the public, making sure they have a face mask. And as an aside, in case there's any bicyclists or runners on the call, we also realize that we don't want to stop the flow of oxygen into your system when you're intensely exercising. So the best recommendation would be to have one of the masks, or a scarf around your neck. And when you're exercising completely alone, away from anyone, certainly you can drop the mask. But when you are leaving a building, perhaps, or going down a main street, make sure that you put that covering on as well.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. That helps a lot. And we will help here, of course, locally on our end to make sure that if people are having problems, you can reach out to our economic development team. We'll be sharing their contact info here as we go on, and we can raise those requests up to the state. And again, New York State, in terms of answering our needs for PPE and other equipment, has been phenomenal. And so we will continue to surface those, and we appreciate that. One of the specific questions we're getting, Lieutenant Governor, is from a business owner named Hazel in Saugerties. She owns the Dancing Tulip Floral Boutique. Once the PPP money, which is federal dollars, comes through to my business, how does that affect my employees who have already started to receive unemployment checks? How do we avoid, quote unquote, double dipping, and how will that process work? Which agency or different government body is going to oversee this so that we as employers know how to do everything legally and where we can go for guidance? And Hazel, really appreciate that question. We've heard that as well. Everybody wants to do the right thing and make sure they're following the protocol. Could you help answer that for us, Lieutenant Governor?
Complicated, Hazel, and I appreciate the frustration that goes into this, because it's a federal program and a state program. The PPE is administered through the Small Business Administration, so they'll be responsible for oversight. Their website would have protocols and what the requirements are. And then the unemployment insurance program, which has an enhanced element from the Federal CARES Act of the additional $600, it's still administered through the state unemployment insurance program. And so I've actually been asked this question a lot in terms of how you make sure that the money from PPP does not conflict with unemployment money. And also individuals who are on unemployment, how does an employer get them to come back to work if they want them to be calculated in their numbers of employees that they've brought back during this 2.5-month period. And what I've been seeing here is different analysis on what's really best for yourself and for your employee when you factor in the other costs that you have to incur to keep that employee, and whether or not it makes more sense for that employee to stay on unemployment insurance and forego the PPP program. But I'll let Megan answer like the other resources in the area, because I know that there's a lot of information that's been compiled to answer these questions. So Megan, you want to jump in for a second on that one?
I know Megan was on the line, but I think we may be having challenges bringing her up, or I don't. How are we doing there? No. All right. Well, we're all figuring out how to operate in this new world of technology.
The statewide small business development centers are really set up, and there are some right in Ulster County. I know you, probably Lisa Berger knows all about them and can connect people with that. So the resources are there. Don't be hard on yourself that you don't know that answer. That is a very complicated question to figure out how the state and federal programs are going to merge together and not be in conflict. And I respect people like Hazel who just want to do the right thing. So there are resources out there to get you the right answers. This is being navigated. We also are assembling a team of volunteers across the state, accountants, attorneys, other individuals who are going to help people get through this as well. And I think that's called our Volunteer Mentor, our COVID-19 Volunteer Mentor Task Force. Go to esd.ny.gov, and you can sign up to get just free legal advice or free accountant advice on the best way to navigate that as well. So we just started getting that up and running, and I think that's going to be a good asset to people like Hazel and others who have these more detailed questions.
That is awesome. That's great. Thank you. That's we'll make sure we share that too. And again, Hazel and others, our local team here on the ground can also help along with Megan and her team in the Regional Empire State Development Office. So we're all going to figure this out together, and if we don't have the answer, we will make sure we get it for you. Megan's on. All right, cool. All right, so Megan is on, and I'm sure we'll bring you in here shortly. We have another question, if we can steal your time for a few more minutes, Lieutenant Governor. Linda and Ken Cool, who own a bed and breakfast in Marlborough, asked, while much has been written about small businesses and their efforts to retain employees during the crisis, there hasn't been a lot written about support for true family-owned mom and pop businesses with no full-time employees, but are still bleeding their cash reserves and struggling to pay bills for rent and mortgages, utilities, insurance, and so on. Are there any programs or advice for these kinds of mom and pop businesses? Thank you very much.
And to Linda and Ken, I love bed and breakfast. There was one time in my life I dreamed of having my own because I just enjoy visiting much. So I know what it's like to put your heart and soul into a business like that and just have this fear that it's going to slip away. So yes, there are programs for you. And the definition of small business under the Small Business Administration accounts bed and breakfast as part of a small business. If you're less than $8 million, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you're making less than $8 million a year. You qualify as a small business for both the PPP, and you don't have to just have employees to get that. That could be counting each other. Also, the economic injury disaster loan is available to you. But I have to give you some bad news is that we believe right now that the small business loans programs that were so heralded as part of the Federal CARES Act legislation, $349 billion, is already just about exhausted. And that's why we have to go back to the federal government to put in more. So what I would suggest is that you talk to these volunteers that are available to you, but it may make sense for you to file for unemployment, which was never available to sole proprietors before. You would not have been eligible in the past, but we broadened the number of people who are eligible for unemployment. Again, depending on what your income has been, you get that $600 a week from the federal government on top of upwards of $500 a week from the state as a maximum. So $1,100 to carry you through the first few months of this, and we'll see if that's going to be reinstituted. So I would suggest that you talk to someone about whether or not that makes sense for you to have a lifeline to get you through this. And it doesn't require you to have employees in this particular program like some of the other ones may have. So hopefully that can help you out.
Thanks,
Megan,
Lieutenant.
is there anything?
Oh.
I don't know if Megan had anything to add to that answer.
It'd be nice to see.
Can
Megan
everybody hear
either
me
way.
now?
Hey, there she is.
All right, we got it.
Thank you.
We can do it. No, Lieutenant Governor, that was perfect, and that is right. Thankfully, the unemployment insurance has those benefits have been expanded due to the pandemic. So that is the best bet right now until there is additional appropriations from Congress made to the PPE and the EIDL programs.
And just one other thing to add, I know at least our local banks, our community banks, have a lot of them have figured out how to basically move mortgage payments, not eliminate them, but to move them sort of the back end of your 20 or 30-year mortgage. So I would encourage you also to reach out to your lenders, especially if they're one of our community banks. They've been fantastic, not just here, but I know across the state. Another question coming from one of my, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorite local businesses from Bread Alone, Daniel Leader, who's the founder there. Will there be state small business programs above and beyond the federal programs that our businesses here in New York State can apply for?
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at right now. I mean, this is a crisis situation. More of our small businesses, which really comprise the vast majority of our businesses in the state of New York, are small, and they are the smaller ones on the main streets like we have in downtowns here in Ulster County. There are programs through, it's called a shared work program, which is available now, and Megan can explain that a little bit, but that also allows for unemployment insurance available to people that otherwise wouldn't have been available to them. So there are some programs, but in terms of is there a new statewide program today to help small businesses? Nothing that's other than what we've already had in place to help, but that's absolutely something we're looking at to see how we wanted to see how the federal programs worked out. And again, those federal numbers need to be replenished. I mean, we cannot pretend that we're anywhere near where we need to be. A lot of businesses did not have the opportunity to apply, or they're trying to hang on with their employees for a while and are now finding that if there's a shutdown for yet another now firm month, which is what we're looking at, that they're going to need help now. So we have to get them back to Washington and pass another stimulus immediately. But Megan, what else we offer our friends from One Bread right now?
Yeah, so Bread Alone has been actually the recipient of a few CFA grants in the past as well. So they're very familiar with ESD programs, and they've been fantastic community partners, I have to say. But one of the programs that the Lieutenant Governor had mentioned is actually offered through our New York State Department of Labor. So it's the Shared Work Program, as she had mentioned. This is really an opportunity for employers to really assist in not laying off their workers during different crises like the one that we're facing. So it essentially asks employers or employees to be cross-trained on various tasks, and to actually be able to share the workforce amongst other businesses throughout the state and throughout the area. It is not the fix-all to everything. It is just one of the programs that is active right now and is able to assist. And we'd be happy in the regional office at ESD to point folks in the right direction. Or I know Lisa in the county exec's office has a tremendous amount of experience with our New York State Department of Labor, so she's another great resource. And again, as the Lieutenant Governor said, we are actively working on trying to strategize how to utilize various existing programs within ESD to really counterbalance the impacts of this pandemic. The regional councils being one of them, but everything is still very fluid, and we're working diligently to make sure that we have the programs ready to help businesses stay in business.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks, Lieutenant Governor. Another one we have coming in, and I think we're going to get a lot of this type of a question, is from John Perry, who wears multiple hats, one of which is he runs a personal training studio here in Uptown Kingston. He's also the elected supervisor of one of our towns, Hurley, which is actually where I was born and grew up. So Supervisor Perry's question with his business hat on, as we get ready to move off of pause, do we see there being a buildup, meaning 25%, 50% of non-essential businesses open, much like how the state removed them? And if a small business like mine can provide an approved plan of action for reopening, might that be accepted, which would allow for local, town, or city or county government to weigh in and make these determinations? That's definitely, I've heard that kind of a question. How do we see this unwinding? You talked about this a little bit, Lieutenant Governor Hochul, but what role can businesses play? How can they share their thoughts? Because I know as I talk to business owners, they're thinking about, once we get through this, how might they open? So that, any thoughts or advice you have there, please?
That's a great question, County Executive and Supervisor Perry. First of all, I'm curious if that was a sole proprietorship and you were the only trainer and you were able to engage in the proper social distancing and the disinfecting of your site, and there was a health benefit to your work, and that could be established, and you may have certifications, it was possible that you could stay open with one person at a time coming in, and as long as there's no physical touching, the 6 feet. So I don't know whether you personally are shut down or not. Maybe you had a larger operation and many employees and a lot of people simultaneously. I do know of some individual people are involved in fitness because of the medical benefits that accrue to that. Some people need that for heart rehabilitation and different circumstances like that. So that might be something that you want to ask specifically offline, and Megan can help us get an answer on that one. But in terms of getting the input from the business community, number one, yes, Megan can be a conduit for recommendations from individual businesses to go to ESD in the calculation. But in terms of leaving it in the hands of the localities, we realize that because the virus doesn't know the difference between one county and another. It doesn't obey county jurisdiction, it doesn't even obey state lines. So that's why we have this regional approach I spoke about at the outset of engaging our neighboring states. But certainly when we undertake the eventual loosening of the valve and letting certain percentages of industries come back, again, ones that are more inclined to be perhaps outdoors, maybe more socially distant by nature, ones where you would not have gathering people, they would actually be the ones most likely to be clear. Common sense dictates. But we have to be constantly monitoring the rate of infection. And if that rate of infection, once we start loosening it up, starts going to another place, we don't want to be in that situation of telling people, oh no, sorry, you got to go back to where we were. That is our biggest fear. I think that would be so disruptive to our economy and literally people's lives if they think we're on a certain path because we're so anxious to get there and then we have to go backwards. So weighing the risk of infection as well as what is a business that wasn't deemed essential the first time, but maybe it was really important, but it just fell off the list once we got more anxious about the number of infections we were seeing. Those could be the ones that come back, and maybe it is outdoor construction or certain activities like that. I don't know for sure, but we are doing this in-depth analysis. No political people involved in this. All this is being driven by businesses and experts on the healthcare side as well as the economic development side. So as much as this uncertainty is driving everyone crazy and it's painful, we do now know that the pause will continue till May 15th. We truly hope that, we'll be able to be making announcements over this time. But I think if we can control the spread even more with the face masks and people continue doing what they're doing, and that we get the money out to people through the unemployment system, which has been a struggle. We admit that the system that was accustomed to getting 50,000 calls a week and had to handle 10 million calls in the same time frame. We understand if you're hearing that there's been a breakdown, there was a breakdown and it couldn't handle the capacity, and we're struggling very hard to try and get back to some better system for the constituents. So that's also a dynamic. So I don't have the answer to you right now to say how we're going to unleash the economy and start bringing it back, but it certainly will be very incremental based on the type of business, how essential it is, and also the risk of infection that's created by doing that.
Thanks, Lieutenant Governor. And I know I want to be mindful of your time. As I've said, we would be thrilled to have you as long as you're able. I know you're extremely busy, and we appreciate how much time you've given. It's about a little after 2:30. We have lots of questions, and we are going to stay on the line, and I believe Megan's able to stay on, and Lisa Berger. But Lieutenant Governor, I wanted to give you the chance to either take one or two more, or I know you may need to run to something else. So if you do have to do that, would love to hear any closing thoughts. You've got hundreds of business owners here on the line, and we really appreciate you taking our questions and again, helping lead us through this unprecedented time.
No, I appreciate that, and I'll put it in Megan's good hands to answer the question. But thank you for creating this opportunity, because I helped, I got my start in life by helping start small businesses right out of law school, a small flower shop on a main street. It's just like Kingston, just like New Paltz. That's why I feel this close affinity, and feeling that your life stream's going down the drain is excruciating for the people on this call. And that's why we are very sensitive to that. And the last thing we ever wanted to do was have to institute these restrictions. It is very unnatural for us in government to have had to do this, but this is a 100-year event, and we hope to never have anyone experience this again. But it also gives us an opportunity to not just try to hang on now, but as we rethink the new economy, what industries are we going to be focusing on? Bringing back supply chains that left us stranded from other countries, our reliance on China for so much. There may be more opportunities for businesses here, but I want to just encourage people to rethink the workplace as we start to reopen. How can you get people? Maybe a business is going to have more people work remotely. Maybe that's going to make sense, and then you can say, "Well, I'm going to continue my business, but 95% of my staff can work remotely now, or some percentage." And those are the questions we'll be asking. What will be the level of contact between employees as we start coming back? So people should be thinking about those answers now. But at the end of the day, this is a excruciating experience, but shame on us if we don't use this opportunity to rethink what it's going to look like in the future we want to have to revitalize our downtowns and to help our rural friends, and particularly in the farm community, and support the local farmers markets and understand the incredible stress they're under, and our not-for-profits, what they're trying to do with limited resources. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to continue to support each other as we have, and to follow the leadership of not just our administration, Governor Hochul and myself, but also leaders like our county executives. So County Executive Ryan, I want to thank you for just bringing us together, and Megan, take it away.
And thank you again, Lieutenant Governor. There is literally no one one, it's just really nice to see your face, even if it's over Zoom, and your smile. Thank you for being with us. And there's no one, the team of you and Governor Cuomo guiding us through this. There's no one else I'd rather be, with as we navigate this. So thank you. Please be safe and healthy, and I'm sure we'll speak with you soon. We're going to keep going here with some questions. And Megan, thank you again for joining us. Lisa Berger, I know, is on the line as well, who you all know and love. So I'll try to play MC here a little bit and queue up some more questions, and we'll go for a little bit longer. So here's another one that we have coming in from Petra at Ceres Technologies. We manufacture equipment for microelectronic and semiconductors, and we are certified for medical device manufacturing. We'd like to ramp up our production for ventilators, ventilator components, respiratory assistance products. ESD, Empire State Development, has offered ramp-up funding for PPE manufacturing. Is there any ramp-up funding for manufacturers wanting to increase production for other critical products? Maybe we'll hand that one to Megan if you're willing to start us off on that one.
Yep, absolutely. And again, another fantastic Ulster County business in Ceres Technologies. So thank you, Petra, for the question. So we do currently have some funding available for various companies that are looking to ramp up production for very specific supplies and materials that are needed to address in this pandemic. I think the easiest thing right now is to have Petra. I will reach out to you personally, or Monique from my office, Legendre, will reach out. We need to get some specific information from you. What we are doing is really going through a very rigorous vetting process for companies, because as you can imagine, we were actually so pleased, and the governor has mentioned this in all of his briefings. There was an absolute influx of businesses throughout the state that have offered to really adjust the products that they were manufacturing to those that would be helpful throughout addressing this pandemic. So what we are doing is working with those that are very much in a good position to do so related to FDA guidelines and others. So we will, Petra, we will reach out to you. If not today, definitely tomorrow, and get some detailed information so we can see what we can do to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Here is another one we're getting. I don't know. We'll see if we can answer this one. So this one's coming from David at the bakery in New Paltz, another one of my favorites. What is the status and likelihood of passage of the Senate bill focused on rent relief? With our businesses closed and our entire staff laid off, rent is our #1 problem in terms of surviving and eventually reopening. Many landlords have shown patience regarding late payments, but at the end of 3 or 4 months, we will owe so much back rent that it may prevent our business from ever reopening. Just as importantly, if we can't pay rent and are forced to close, it may create hardships for landlords that they cannot recover from. This Senate bill, which is Senate Bill 8125A, which I'll admit I have not read in full, and I will do now, seems to deal proactively with this issue. Can we depend on it passing? I don't know. I have not read it enough to be able to respond specifically to that bill, but maybe either Lisa or Megan, if you're willing to just take a stab on the broader discussion of rent relief, mortgage relief, and I know that, the ban on evictions as well.
I'll start and then can definitely pass it over to Lisa. So to be perfectly honest with you, I am not going to predict whether or not anything is going to pass at this point in time, because things are so fluid. I honestly can't give you a solid answer. One thing I do want to make clear, though, because I think there's been some misconceptions and misinformation out there, this bill and the pause on evictions, or I'll just say pause on evictions. This does not mean that the governor has said, do not pay your rent. What it has articulated, or what he has articulated within these executive orders and within this legislation, is that you cannot be evicted for non-payment of your rent or leasing payments for a 3-month period. So there has been a large number of questions that we have received saying that I don't have to pay my rent. That is not true. You are going to end up having to pay your rent at some point. To say, and really getting back to the question, to say what is going to be, is there going to be something in the form of some type of rent relief or mortgage relief? We really don't know at this point. But I will tell you that the governor's task force and each of the state agencies are really looking into every possible scenario to allow for business to resume some type of normalcy as soon as possible. So at this point, I think it's safe to say that everything is on the table. We're really just trying to figure out how that actually happens.
Thank you. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to add anything to that that you're hearing or that you're aware of.
I can just weigh in and say that I very much appreciate the remarks that Megan just made. That I think that kind of lost in what was put forth by the governor is the idea that you should still be paying your rent. And as difficult as it is, if you're able to do so, it may actually make recovering a little bit easier because you won't be so far behind. So I think that, Megan, thank you for your clear explanation and answer to that question. I very much appreciate it. And I know our business community appreciates it.
Thank you, Lisa. I know we're running tight on time. I'm going to take a very quick one that I can answer, and then I have one more for one or both of you, and then we'll wrap it up and let everybody go on with their day. Here's a question from Christina from the Phoenicia Woodland Playhouse. What is happening with summer camps in Ulster County this year? I usually run summer camps during July and August, and I'm unsure of how to proceed in terms of planning and enrollment. This is a question we've heard a lot from a lot of folks, and a lot of uncertainty, which I understand. So I want to just clarify that. At this point, we are not at a point where I can give a certain answer on that, unfortunately. We're not going to make decisions about what would happen in July or August. At this point, what I hope is that by July or August, we'll be in a place where we could, maybe with some tweaks to how these camps run, that we might be able to get them open, but I just don't know yet. So, Christina, I wish I could give you a better, more firm answer. What I would say is I definitely wouldn't give up hope that you will be able to open. We're going to try to do everything we can to make that happen. And I know at the state level this is being tracked and thought about and talked about as well. So I wanted to at least address it and say we're not at a decision yet, and we'll have more to come on that, and hopefully it'll be good news. I know that will affect lots of folks, not just at your camp, but a lot of our towns and municipalities run camps for young people in the summer, and I hope that we're in a very different place come July and August. So one more quick one for one of both of you, if you're willing. So coming from John at Kingston Crown, we filled out all the online paperwork for SBA loans and grants and for the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, immediately, and we still have not seen any help from the government or our local bank, even though funds were promised to be quickly turned over. Our business remains closed due to COVID-19 with no means of revenue. Is there any hope for us? And John, before I pass it off, I know there are a lot of people with that exact question. Is there hope for us? And we are doing everything we possibly can to navigate what is admittedly a confusing set of programs at the state and really at the federal level, and some challenges at the state level. I do think there is hope. I know that's easy maybe for me to say, but I do think everybody's doing their best to support you and others in that position. And I know the Lieutenant Governor spoke about at the federal level funding being already used up for PPP, and to push your federal representatives to refund and add more money into those programs. That's really something key that everybody can participate in. That's been one of the roadblocks. But Megan, maybe if you'll start us off on that one and what you're hearing and thinking on that subject.
Yep, absolutely. So the short answer is all hope is not lost. I think that, what the Lieutenant Governor had mentioned before and what the county executive just reiterated is true, that the funding as of now has lapsed in terms of the appropriations. But the good thing is that if you did have your application in and submitted already, then you are still covered. That those applications are still being processed. What was released by the SBA just this morning was that they're not accepting any new applications going forward. I'm sorry to say that I'm not surprised that you haven't heard anything just yet. The number of applications that the SBA and the local banks are processing is similar to, they were saying something like what they've processed in the last 14 days is what they've processed in the last 14 years. It is absolutely unprecedented. So as painful as it sounds, I would encourage you to continue to reach out to your local bank and to the SBA as much as possible. If you are still hitting roadblocks, feel free to reach out to my office. I don't know exactly what we will be able to do to help, but it's good to try to go down a different avenue. I know Lisa and again, Monique Legendre in my office have been working closely together on all of this. But it is easy to say that all hope is not lost. And it's good. It's really important to understand that these loans are being processed on a first come, first served basis. So the earlier that you got your application in, the better off you will be longer term, even if you haven't necessarily received the money in hand just yet.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Megan. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I just thought I'd quickly jump in and say to you, John, that I agree with both of them. All hope is not lost. And in fact, that's what our office is here to do, provide you with hope and knowledge and some assistance through this. And so while we cannot help with a decision from the SBA on any application that you've put in, we can help you get some assistance through the Small Business Development Center, through SCORE, and even with people in our own office who may be able to deliver help to you. And every business owner out there today should know that. And I just really want to reiterate both what Pat and Megan said, which is one of the most important things any of you can do today is pick up the phone and lobby your federally elected officials to have more money put into these programs that serve businesses like yours. That's what we need. We need action now.
Thanks, Lisa. And I know I will say, at least for our federal representatives here, both Congressman Delgado and Senator Schumer and Gillibrand, they are very aware of this need. They are working extremely hard to get that funded. And frankly disappointed that it hasn't moved more quickly. And so I know, particularly since it's stuck in the Senate, that Senator Schumer has been really driving that, and we thank him for everything that he's gotten to this point, and I know more to come. But we have to just keep up that pressure and encourage friends in other areas to call your representatives who might not be as engaged on this, shall we say, as ours are, and we're very fortunate that they are. I think it's a good note to end on, this idea of hope. So we'll pause the questions there. If you have more questions, though, please, we are capturing the ones coming in, and we'll try to get back to those as best we can. I know we never have the full time to do that. I'm putting up a slide here now, which if you want to even just do a screen capture and take this information down from your screen, these are just some additional pieces of information for you about the new order on PPE, about businesses that might want to get involved in rapid testing, how to request a waiver for being considered essential, which you can do through ESD. And so that's just some information there for you to reference. And finally, we'll also put up our contact info here for our Ulster County Office of Economic Development. Lisa and her team, you all, I think, know her well, and of course, Megan too. We are, the main reason that I have hope, yes, of course, we are going to need money and support from the federal level, but frankly, the main reason I have hope is because between the business owners and community leaders on this line, our local leaders in Ulster County, in Megan's office at ESD, up in Albany with Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, that's the reason I have hope, because I know how intensely people are working right now to get this fixed, to get it figured out, even though we understand that it's not going to be perfect and it is going to be bumpy. This number here and this contact is a great starting point for you. And Lisa and her team have been working nonstop, and frankly, we know it's just going to get busier and busier. So we're going to figure out how to get them more resources. So on that note, is there anything just quickly, Megan, thank you for taking your time. I know how you're spread across a huge geographic area, although maybe working remotely more, but covering lots of challenges and supporting thousands of businesses. Anything you want to add that we didn't get to cover before we wrap up?
I just want to offer up, just make sure that everyone takes an opportunity to visit the esd.ny.gov website, our main site. It is a really fantastic resource for a ton of different items related to COVID-19, whether it is the essential business designations, but there's also additional resources in terms of the SBA, and then other things that ESD is doing as well to try to combat this pandemic. So I really encourage everyone on this call to take a look at that website along with the counties as just another tool in your toolbox to get through these difficult times. And thank you for putting this together, County Executive and Lisa. It's fantastic working with you. And I too have hope in being able to be in this together. So thank you.
Thanks, Megan. And that's esd.ny.gov. Is that right? esd.ny.
That's correct.
Cool. Well, ESD and your team have been here helping our businesses long before COVID-19. We know you're going to be here with us through this crisis and when we come out the other side. So thank you very, very much to you, and please pass that on to your team. And to all the business owners and leaders on the line, again, I think it's a message of hope and resilience. I really think our community, just knowing this community, knowing what's in our DNA and our culture, we are going to figure this out. You all and we are going to have to change, maybe in pretty significant ways. But I do know, and I'm confident we're going to come through this, and we're going to do everything we can to help the urgent pleas and requests for help that we hear from you. We hear them. I feel them. I've been a small business owner myself. I understand how difficult this is and how much pressure you're under. So just know, for myself and Lisa, our whole team here, and I know Megan, her team, and Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, we are all going to make this happen or die trying and work ourselves as hard as we can. So thanks, everybody, and we'll speak with you soon.